The moment I called out for him, I didn't realize the door I was opening. "Can you help me with this?" I asked, my voice casual, though my heart was racing in a way I couldn't explain. My dress had gotten stuck halfway up my back, the zipper refusing to budge, and my husband wasn't home. My father-in-law Richard was the only other person in the house. Richard, always composed and polite, entered the room. "Of course," he said, his voice steady. He stepped closer, and I could feel the air shift. He'd always been a presence in our lives, kind, dependable, the perfect patriarch of the family. But in that moment, as his hands brushed the fabric of my dress, I noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. His touch was gentle, deliberate. "This zipper, it's really stuck," he said, his breath warm against my skin. A shiver ran down my spine, and I prayed he didn't notice. I told myself it was nothing, just a momentary reaction to someone being so close, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. "Try pulling it gently," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He tugged again, his fingers brushing against my bare back. I felt a heat rising in me that I couldn't ignore. "I might have to undo it a little," he murmured. I nodded, unable to speak. His hands moved lower, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. His hands lingered, the zipper caught in a delicate dance between resistance and release. "Got it," he finally said, his voice breaking the silence. The zipper slid down with a quiet hum, the dress loosening around me. But then, something happened. The dress slipped further than I intended, pulling slightly at my hips. I gasped and turned to pull it back up, but the look on Richard's face stopped me. There was something in his eyes, a mixture of surprise, admiration, and something deeper, something forbidden. I should go," he stammered, stepping back. But neither of us moved. The air between us crackled with an unspoken tension, a line that had been blurred in an instant. "Thank you," I said quickly, turning away to fix my dress. My hands trembled as I adjusted the zipper, trying to convince myself that nothing had happened. But the truth was undeniable. Something had shifted, and it couldn't be undone. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the memory of that moment. Every interaction with Richard felt charged, every glance a reminder of what had transpired. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was just a fleeting moment of vulnerability blown out of proportion. But then, it happened again. It was a week later, during a family barbecue. Everyone was outside, laughing and enjoying the summer sun. I went inside to grab more drinks, and Richard followed, offering to help. As we stood in the kitchen, the space between us seemed to shrink. "About the other day," he began, his voice low. My heart raced and I turned to face him, unsure of what to say. "It's fine," I said quickly, cutting him off. "Let's just forget about it." But he shook his head. "I can't." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I felt my resolve faltering, the pull between us growing stronger. "We can't do this," I whispered, more to myself than to him. But even as I said it, I didn't move away. Neither did he. The sound of laughter from outside broke the spell, and we stepped apart, both pretending nothing had happened. But the damage was done. A line had been crossed, and there was no going back. Over the following weeks, the tension between us became impossible to ignore. Every stolen glance, every accidental touch was a reminder of the unspoken connection we shared. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, teetering between desire and guilt, excitement and shame. Then came the night that changed everything. My husband was out of town, and Richard came over to drop off some tools. It was late, the house quiet and dimly lit. As we stood in the doorway, the air between us seemed to hum with electricity. "I shouldn't be here," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Then why are you?" I asked, my own voice trembling. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, his eyes searching mine for a sign, a permission I couldn't bring myself to deny. What happened next was a whirlwind of emotions I'll never forget. It was wrong, undeniably so. But it was also real, raw, and impossible to resist. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about the consequences or the betrayal. I was caught in the storm, swept away by a force I couldn't control. The aftermath was just as intense. The guilt was overwhelming, the weight of what we'd done pressing down on me with every passing moment. I avoided Richard as much as possible, but the memories lingered, haunting me at every turn. And yet, a part of me couldn't regret it. That moment had awakened something in me, a side of myself I'd long suppressed. It was messy, complicated, and utterly consuming. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: my life would never be the same.